Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here for our kickoff to our season of gallery guest artist receptions. We've got a familiar face here, Professor Emeritus William Bukowski. He was professor here from 1980 to 2020, which means he, I think, taught the whole department of people who are currently here. A vastly influential personality in art, not only on campus, but I would say throughout our fellowship and throughout the region. He's universally admired by professors that I meet around the area, especially they admire his consistency. He paints and paints and paints. He never stops. I was out with colleagues just now, and we were working on a project. Obsessions that we remember from Bill Bukowski. Here's the incomplete list. He is a guy who gets obsessed. The Packers, comic books, ancient Roman and Greek coins, jazz, trading cards, football, baseball, etc. Titian, the painter. That one's still ongoing. I think it's burning hot. Italian New Wave films. You could think Federico Fellini. Travel in general, especially regarding art. Tom Waits. The Beatles. Wes Anderson. Taylor Swift. Ed Sheeran. Iconography. Cappuccino. Lego. He's a grandfather. And his band, Midlife Crisis. We're going to kick off with a little video that was made at his retirement, and then we'll hear from Bill Bukowski.
My son Jeff edited that. I thought he did a great job, didn't he? I mean, that was so fun. As I'm old now, I brought glasses, so you might not recognize me when I put my glasses on. Okay? Still me. Yeah, this is my alter ego. Old man is my alter ego. Okay, I asked myself the questions that I'll answer for you, okay? I thought instead of just opening it up, I'll ask the questions and then I'll give you the answer. Like I always did, right, my fellow colleagues? The first one is, why the name of the show? Which is Now and Then. And the reason is because I sprinkled into the show some paintings that I did before I came to Bethany. I was a student, I was a grad student, I was trying to figure out what I was doing, and then I added other paintings that I've done since I was at Bethany. So it was really specifically curated for Bethany students because since I doubt that they think about time, there's like a 45-year gap in some of these paintings. Many of them are from this year, but some of them are 45 years old. And I just thought to ponder that would be a good exercise for students because they are indestructible and they'll live forever. That was my first question. My second question is, how did I develop my aesthetic? And so why do I paint these things, or how did this happen? And when I first was an artist, I first thought of myself as an artist when I was 5 years old because I enjoyed it. I was getting a little bit of encouragement from my mom, and I thought, oh, this is cool. I like this. This is fun. But I did think of myself as an artist. But as was mentioned in the intro, I loved comic books, and I came to college to be a comic book artist. I didn't want to be a fine art artist, a fine artiste. You have to pronounce it differently if you say it. And so I started off doing comic books. I did a weekly comic strip called Augmento. It was in the college newspaper. And it's now in the archives at UW Oshkosh, where I went to college. But I developed my aesthetic by looking at paintings and looking at paintings and looking at paintings and reading philosophy. But a lot of it was looking at paintings. I would look at a painting I liked, and I thought, oh, I think I could do this. There's something about this that I like, and I think I can do it. And so that's how it ended up developing. I always thought of myself as a figurative artist. I wanted to do people. I still like to do people, but I'm waiting for ways to incorporate them into the paintings. Edit the out, okay? What do I expect the audience to get out of my paintings when they look at my paintings? I want you to look at these paintings and enjoy a feeling of joy, a feeling of the experience of a sunny summer day. Many of them are summer or fall. And so joy and beauty, beauty is the goal. I think these are beautiful, and I think they're also ordinary. There's only one where I kind of cheated on, and that was the sunset, because sunsets are always pretty. I did a sunset, so I'm guilty on that account. But normally, when you look at these, if you were standing next to me out painting, which many of these were done outside, standing around looking at the landscape. I like to be in it. So as part of the experience, I want to share the experience of being alive and breathing this air and seeing this light, and I want to try to transcribe it into paint. And for some reason, I think that was good enough for the last 50 years. That seems crazy, doesn't it? My education, I went to University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. I was actually dating my high school sweetheart, and she came to Bethany. And she was tempting me because, Eve and all that. She tempted me to come to Bethany, but they really didn't have an art department. And it was like, my dad isn't going to like this. And I was also Catholic at the time. So a Catholic artist coming to Bethany, it was a 2-year school. There was a very nice art teacher, Edna Bukowski. I met her. I've got to know her since. But there really wasn't a program, so I didn't even try. I did visit Bethany in those days, and those are very interesting experiences. The soccer team, I saw the soccer team play, and it was like magic. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. After Sherry went to Bethany, she came to Oshkosh, where I was, and said, no, this isn't going to work. Let's go to Mankato State. I know these people in Mankato. So I came to Mankato State and graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Art. And then our last semester, we were engaged. This is kind of dovetails into how I got to Bethany. We were engaged, and Sherry got a call from Holy Cross. She was an education major, elementary ed. She got a call that said, come to Madison. Well, I wanted to go to Madison for grad school. I didn't tell Holy Cross that. So in retrospect, sometimes it's really amazing how life goes. because Sherry got a call. We moved to Madison. I was in graduate school, and then the president of the synod was the pastor, George Orbeck, at Holy Cross. He came to my MFA show and my MA show, which, that's good. But then I got a job at Thiel College in Greenville, Pennsylvania. I think God said, you know what, you have to learn a little bit more before you can go to Bethany. You have to go to Thiel College, which is a Lutheran school in western Pennsylvania. And it's one of those years, I don't know if you've had those yet, some of you older people may have, but it was a year in my life that stood out like I learned the most in my life that year. But it wasn't in school, it was trying to teach. It was dealing with a small liberal arts Lutheran college. Because, you know, when you go to Madison in graduate school, there's a certain arrogance that they have that I had too. You know, I'm from Madison. I'm a big deal. And I had to go to Thiel College so that I could figure out how to do this. And then at Thiel College, I met a great man who helped me quite a bit. His name was Ron Pivovar. And then I literally got a telephone call from Paul Helland saying, would you be interested in coming to Bethany? And I said, maybe. So Sherry and I had talked about it. I mean, we spent, a while. But it was literally a call to come to Bethany to teach. And I'd been to Bethany. I knew what was there. It's like, oh, wow. And so we accepted the call and came to Bethany. And looking in retrospect, when I used to talk to students, I used to be a teacher. And I would counsel or talk to students occasionally. And looking back retrospectively at my own life, it seemed like it was just everything made sense in a way that all I had to do was go along with it. You know, you go to college and you get a job teaching, but it wasn't the job. And then you get the job, and then you retire and paint. And I really wanted students to think about that, because it's that old cliche, you're going to wake up one day and you're going to be 71. And it won't be that far away. So that's how we ended up at Bethany. And it was literally a call from Paul Helland, who was the academic dean. We were coming home for spring break, and he said, well, as long as you're coming home, why don't you drive the extra 300 miles and come to Bethany? And for some reason, we thought it made sense. And you know, one of the things that really made me want to come, they had an awesome choir. I met Randy Ellefson, and he had the choir going when I was walking through, and I thought, this is so cool. Once I was here, what was my teaching philosophy, you might ask? As a teacher at Bethany, and I still a little titch of arrogance from Madison, and feeling pretty confident in my own skill, I never wanted to make any apologies for being at Bethany as an institution with students. There's no apology that you're here at Bethany. This is going to be as great as we can make it, as great as the talent you have. And so that always fueled me. And sometimes I did pray if I could only have one talented student, please, one talented. And I always did. The prayer was always answered. But, you know, in those days, it was a small school. In 1983, they were predicting its demise because, you know, they were. And so I never felt limited by Bethany or limited by Mankato. You know, you live in southern Minnesota, so what? Let's take the plane to go to New York City. Let's take a plane and go to Italy. Let's take a plane let's drive to Chicago and sleep on my brother's floor with 10 people, 10 students, which we did. We went to the Chicago Art Institute and the Milwaukee Art Institute and slept on my brother's floor. We got together a collection to buy some cereal and some bread for toast. It's all true. As a professor, I've been greatly blessed too, because this attitude about not settling, so to speak, for I'm in Mankato, what am I going to do? I've been able to travel quite a bit. And when I was a faculty member here, was one of the heydays of the Schwann Foundation. And so faculty were allowed to travel. And I also was granted several sabbaticals, which was the same idea. So I was able to paint on location in places like the Garden of Gethsemane. I did a painting at the Garden of Gethsemane. I did a painting in Aix-en-Provence where Cézanne studied. Cézanne painted in Aix-en-Provence. I did a painting in Giverny where Monet lived. And I've also been able to give lectures on the spot in places like the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. I mean, that's kind of cool, isn't it? I thought it was. Back to my aesthetic, my grandson, who is here tonight, he said, you know, Grandpa, I think the landscapes are pretty good, but you don't have enough orcs in them. So I'm still working on the orcs, but I also was able to lecture at the Metropolitan Museum and the Museum of Modern Art, which I was very happy about. I thought, oh, this is, you know, I'm just bragging, sorry, but it's true. It was true, and it was awesome. All you have to do is ask for permission and then give them a syllabus from one of your classes, and they'll let you lecture. So what does it mean to lead an artist's life? There's a kind of a phrase called an artist's life, and what I think it means is that you make decisions based on your aesthetic and based on your vocation that support it and that inspire it. So the artist's life means you go to the play. You go to a play, you go to many plays, you go to the orchestra hall and hear symphony music, you go to the ballet, you go to the opera. You do things in the fine arts that help support you as an artist. And you do this not because your teacher's requiring it, you do it because you enjoy it. You feel the benefit from it, and it inspires your artwork. And I think that leading an artist's life isn't always that easy, but it's very rewarding and satisfying. Now, the artist's life, too, the practical matters of an artist's life, what does that mean? It means, for those of you looking for spouses, or your spouse is an artist, edit that, but they have to be understanding, because as an artist, you need more time. You need time alone. You need time to do your art. You need money to spend on art supplies or to take a boat to Malta to see a painting. There's one painting in Malta that I wanted to see. So we went to Reggio Calabria and then Sicily and then Malta and saw the painting. And Sherry's survived still. But it's true, though, a spouse has to be understanding. You have to know, at least they have to have some potential, right? I'm still working on mine a little bit. The seventh question, what about the Bethany altarpiece? I did the Bethany altarpiece. Now you know the guy who did it, the one that you go to chapel every day and you see that altarpiece. I call that one of the Bethany miracles because they hired me. I'm a staff member. I work here. I'm called here. And Dennis Marzoff actually wanted like the Eisenheim altarpiece by Matthias Grunwald. It's like, no, Dennis, no. How about let me just try it? And they did. They let me try it. And it's 30 years old this year. The altarpiece is 30, which is older than any student here. When I did the altarpiece, all these bigger works that I've done were in the Bethany Art Studios. So like the drawing room and the painting room became my studio. In the summer where there was no one there, it was nice, but the students were pretty understanding too. So I found models. Emmett Norrell built a cross for me. He built the cross and we propped it up in the drawing room on this platform. And I know you've heard this before, but I got to use them, right? A guy came to an art show that we were having, and he looked like Jesus, and it turned out he was a 33-year-old carpenter. 33-year-old carpenter. And I said, well, Jesus is here now. We can get this painting going, The fact that he was a carpenter meant that I couldn't actually hire him by the hour. I could only pay him for one sitting, and shot a lot of photographs. But he came in then years later. He walked into my office and said, I'm Jesus. And I'm like, what? And we don't really have a security at Bethany where I can call security. So it was, and then he told me, of course, he was the model for Jesus, and it was many years later. It was like 20 years later. So he didn't look this, he was 50, 20 plus 33. I had a nightmare that I had to teach a math class. Seriously. And I've been wanting to tell that to a math teacher, but I had a nightmare that I had to teach a math class. It's like, how could this happen to me? The altarpiece I worked on in 1995, and it was dedicated in the spring of '96. And it was a struggle. We moved it in the winter, and we rolled it up because I couldn't get it out of the door, and some of the surface actually cracked. I had to restore it when it went up because there were some cracks already. But since then, I think it's held up pretty well. I've been happy with it. The second miracle was the creation fresco. I did the creation fresco. How do you even do a fresco? It was on the Italy trip. I was with the president then, Marv Meyer. Marv was sitting next to me in the Sistine Chapel. And I said, Marv, but wouldn't it be nice if we had a fresco at Bethany? Marv, come on, fresco. And he said, yes, it would. It would be great. And at that time, the finances were still flowing, let's say. And they were putting up the new sign. The building wasn't even up yet. They didn't have the design done yet. And I already had the fresco. So then I found a fresco class in Cherry, Italy. They were teaching how to do fresco. And I'm like, hey, I found a workshop. Maybe I can go and learn how to do this before the building's done. So I got the grant, and we went to Italy. I went to Italy. It was a month long, living in a palazzo in Cherry, which is an Etruscan town outside of Rome. It was like reality TV. It was like a reality TV show with people trying to do frescoes and having it fall on them. It was terrible. But I made fast friends with the teacher, whose name was Jim Shagru. He was kind of a tough guy, and he would teach with a little cigar in his mouth. And he'd get real close to you. So when you're trying to fresco, you're like coughing. He was also saying, oh, you don't need protective gloves. Just stick your hands in that. And it's like, yeah. And then I said, Jim, if I get a fresco in Mankato, would you come and help me? He's like, yeah, if you get a fresco, I'll come. I'll be there. Not knowing I already had the fresco. So at the time, he was actually from LA. And so he came. And we put them up in what we called the Villa Tigan. Let's just say it didn't go smoothly. It was towards the end of the semester, and the guys in Villa Tigan, it was rough. But the planning for the fresco took 4 years. I went in 1998 to the class. And then I did studies, and I did egg temperas, and I was in contact with Jim, and he came and worked with the engineers, and they built a steel window in the wall. So there's actually an empty space behind the fresco. And then he troweled 5,000 pounds of sand and lime into the window space, which I didn't do that, because it's like, this is really hard, and you guys go ahead. I'll do this, except I'll use this hand. And that's true. That is true. The fresco, though, was done in 2002. It took 4 years to plan, and it took 20 days to paint. But the way you paint a fresco is it's like a damp sort of cement. If it's too dry, the color doesn't adhere, and if it's too wet, it burns the color away. So it has to be perfect, just right. And Jim he's good. He's really good, and he's strong. He said doing fresco is like bench pressing all afternoon because you have to compress this cement onto the wall. And I did it during the class, but it was terrible. It was horrible. It was hard work. And so he helped me out, and we did the fresco. What other commissions do I have in the area? Well, I did some paintings for Mount Olive down the street where hopefully some of you go to church. But I also have done, Pastone is a kind of a transition retirement sort of place by Sibley Park. I did an 18-foot landscape for them that's in the lobby when you walk in. And when I had to I did the painting here. It's like, how am I going to get this to Sibley Park? So I talked to Mark Weekman. And of course, Mark Weekman had a semi. So he put me and the painting in the back of his semi. It was dark. But we made it. We installed it. It was beautiful. It worked out. I appreciated that. I've also done some paintings at Our Savior's down the hill and to the right. Those are the two most recent commissions. I did Moses parting the Red Sea and Jesus calming the storm for the church there, and they want to talk to me about some more work, which I think it would be, it's like, hurry up, I'm getting old, you know? Step on it. And that's also true. In Waterville, I did 10 paintings for the Trinity Lutheran in Waterville. These are both Missouri Synod churches. So they have 10 paintings in Waterville. Some Bethany students are in it, some faculty, but I did Life of Christ in a series down the nave of the church and in the chancel area for Pastor Mummy there. And then I also, Resurrection Lutheran, right on Main Street, I did 5 paintings for them of similar scenes from the life of Christ. And these are all of it. I did, in Elysian, St. Peter Bell Church, I did some decorative wall painting, some clouds and crosses on a scaffolding that was super scary. At one point, I had to balance on one leg over the organ while I'm painting clouds. And if I fall, I'm inside of the organ. But I made it. I didn't get hurt. And I know Jason covered some of it, but my artistic obsessions, sometimes as an art student, as an art history student, you kind of think, is there a period that if you could time travel, you'd go back to? And most of the time you say, well, no, they are all disease and, warfare. But obviously, to me, the Impressionists were a big influence on me. Monet, Manet, Cicely Pizarro. When I was young, there was a 100th anniversary of Impressionism. There were big shows happening in Chicago and around the country, and I was seeing those when I was looking for that aesthetic. And to see like an early Pizarro, I thought, this is it. This is what I want to do. And so the Impressionists have always kind of weighed heavily on me. What I really love, though, is Monet in his late years. He's 80. He's as old as Paul McCartney, and he's doing those giant water lily paintings. So I'm encouraged. I keep going. I also am a huge fan of the Renaissance, and Titian is the greatest painter who ever lived. So write that in those notebooks, okay? For those of you taking notes, Titian is the greatest painter who ever lived, and he lived a long time ago, and yet he expanded the vocabulary of art and of painting. And so, when I had to teach art history, I first looked at it as a great curse, Because, when you're a studio artist, you're an artist. You're not a historian. You paint and you think and you paint. And now I had to teach art history, which is prehistoric to modern. It's like, you're joking, That's way too much, right, Jason?
Yeah.
It turned out, though, to be a great blessing because when you go through that cycle, you restudy everything, and you have an appreciation for the whole history of Western culture, for me. And I kind of stuck to the West. I know that Jason leans a little more to the East. But I am kind of stuck in the West. When people ask me where you travel, I say I only travel as far as the Roman Empire. But it was a big empire, so there's a lot of options. I do get obsessed with art and artists, and like Roman frescoes. I got to have them. Roman frescoes. I have to see them. I have to go wherever they are to see them. And then the other single painters like Velasquez or Vermeer, but they're pretty standard. The thing with me is I want to see it in person. I don't want to look at it on the internet. I want to look at it as I'm standing here, and I think that makes a huge difference when you're trying to understand that aesthetic thing, that beauty that I've been mumbling about. Other interests that really inspire me, I don't know why, but the Beatles. I started listening to the Beatles when I was 10, and I never got over it. The Taylor Swift, not so much, but the Beatles. The Beatles are, and the reason you could say, well, why? Who cares about the Beatles? They're almost all dead. It's old. But when I grew up in the 60s, what they stood for was a kind of limitless creativity that kept changing and evolving, and it opened your eyes up to so many things that you thought you didn't know about before, you thought you could do. And I'm not referring to the drug use or anything negative. It's all good. But for some reason, I'm still inspired. Cinema is another inspiration. I love movies. I love the history of cinema. I studied it in college. My all-time favorite class, history of the cinema. More than any art history class, more than any art class, history of the cinema. And it's been really a practical class because I love to critique films, and that class is the one that introduced me to it. And what's weird when you think about it, I took a history of cinema class in like 1973 or 74. Look at all the cinema that came after that. That was only up to that point. I mean, like the 70s in America, that was before Martin Scorsese was even a director. And so, but there's a lot to learn from it, and to me it's very inspiring. I don't understand jazz, but I love jazz because it's so artistic. It happens, and it's different every night, and it's kind of art music. They don't try to tell a story, or they don't, there's no "she loves you," yeah. But it kind of unhinges part of your brain, I think, and it allows you to think creatively, and I go back to that quite a bit. I think travel is essential. I think that travel has been a major influence on me, and all my travel is around what art I can see. And I know that doesn't sound that much fun to some of you, but it's so fun. It's more fun than Disneyland. It's more fun than Seven Flags. It's more fun than skiing at Vail. I mean, it's the greatest. It's like going to a health spa, but also a fun health spa that sort of reignites your whole body. When you see great art, it is refreshing, enlivening your spirit. But I really want to emphasize the fact that the arts in general do that. And that it goes back to the artist's life and why that you want to experience the arts and how that works in you as a person, as a creative. And even if you're not creative, it's very enriching and rewarding. Now, if I can I still have a little time. So what I want to do is just look at these two paintings and explain why one is bad and one is good. And so this is a painting I did in 1977. I have paintings that I don't even know when I did them. They're so old. But I did that painting outside of Madison, and I was in grad school, and at the time in grad school, everyone read Art News and Art in America. No one said, hey, let's go out and paint like Monet or, the plein air artists. And I convinced one guy to come with me, and we'd go drive out. I had a Super Beetle, a blue Super Beetle. Not a good car for painting. It's small, and you have wet paintings. And at least one occasion, Sherry had to carry the painting out the window as we're driving. She remembers it fondly, though. So when I was doing a painting like this, I really was overwhelmed by nature. In green, what in the world is green? I really struggled with, what do I see? What am I seeing here? I don't know what to do. And the teachers that I had didn't know what to do. The teachers that I had were brought up on Willem de Kooning, Jackson Pollock, Achille Gorky. They didn't know how to paint from life. They didn't know how to do Rembrandt techniques. They knew how to paint like an abstract expressionist. So when I would do these kind of paintings, they'd go, oh, well, okay, do 10 of them, and that'll be good. And they didn't have to tell me, because I was doing 10 of them, because I needed to learn. As I look, you might say, why do I still own it? Why didn't I trash it? That one, ask an artist friend. I don't know. I save too much. But there's some parts of it that I still like. I still like some of these background brushstrokes. So I thought, I might as well, I think I can store that somewhere. But the green is hideous. It's kind of clunky. I don't mind the Z. And there's a few strokes here that I like. But it was really a struggle for me. And the other part of it is, you're trying to show off. You're at Madison. You're a big shot. You're arrogant, and you're doing an ugly landscape. So there was kind of like a tension there with expressionist students going, abstract students going, loser. But you do enough of them, they back off. Now with this one, this is 7 Mile. This is a crick from 7 Mile. And what I'm trying to do in a painting like this is I'm trying to find the rhythm of nature. The rhythm. What is the rhythm? Well, it's how it feels and how it moves and how your eye moves through it. There's a couple nice strokes here. I really like those sort of the wavy strokes. The more you look at it, it should open up in some way. And there it goes back to that aesthetic. Like, what is the aesthetic? The aesthetic is beauty and joy and breathing air and enjoy being alive. And you can take it into enjoying God's creation, of course. And there's an infinite number there. There's an infinite number. I can paint the same bank every day and it's going to be different. I really like the color here. Like there's a section here. I like this. And I come back to it and I enjoy looking at it. Most of the paintings I enjoy. I try not to do bad paintings. But there's another comment I wanted to make. Those little ones in the back are going up and down Adams Street, way in the back, right by President Pfeiffer. And then there's this one of these people hiking in Colorado. And you think, why did you do those? Those don't fit in. You're doing all these Minnesota landscapes, and they're kind of out in the countryside. I had a really strange inspiration for that. I had to do a presentation on Pablo Picasso at Mount Olive. And Picasso did anything he wanted to. He didn't have to worry about his style or what he had been doing before. And I thought, well, yeah, I think I could do an 8x10 just for fun. Picasso would have. And that's a really unlikely inspiration, because if you know his work, he didn't do anything like this unless after he was 15. He didn't really paint like this anymore. But I just thought, as an artist, what does it matter? I can do this. It still follows my aesthetic. It's still interesting to me. It still emits the beauty that I'm after. And so I thought you'd like to know that it's an unlikely source. Now the big painting here, the two paintings by Andy, those were done in 1980, before I came to Bethany. I was planning to come. And I was in Pennsylvania, and those are both from Pennsylvania. And when you look at them, I don't know if you can tell the difference in style. Sometimes I did trick Ryan Klebe. So I don't know if that's good or bad. But it's an old painting. I mean, these are old paintings, and you can look at them. I'd like you to look at them and think about 40 years that have passed since between the two, and see if I've learned anything maybe, or see how you might want to react. At this point, I would take a question if I didn't answer them all already. Yes?
When you go out to these major spots, how do you decide, like, I'm going to paint this specific area?
It's really an intuition and a feeling, and you kind of walk out, and you've been here before, you sort of look, and the light is just right. I go out usually from 9 until 11 in the morning, and I look for the light, the shadows. I like certain shadows. I like sunny days, and then my decision is based on that. I've done it a lot. There's no frame around it when you go out in nature. There's no end. Like with a photograph, you have an end, but in nature, it's endless. So you have to really, you start drawing like a stick composition, and that's how I pick it. It's just lines, a few lines, and then it's good. Yes?
Follow up to that one. I think if any of us were to go out to a site, say 7 Mile Creek or something, and you're confronted by literally 1 million leaves, 1,000 stones, and 10 million blades of grass, and a normal person would say, forget it. But could you talk a little bit about the frame of mind you kind of have to get into in order to not be overwhelmed by that?
What happens is you develop a system of seeing. Like I know how I see, if you get what I'm saying. When I look at a scene, I know how I can translate that into brush strokes. And yeah, sometimes you don't get every detail. Sometimes you don't even see the details. I put glasses on so I could see more details. Unfortunately, I think I have to wear them now. But there's a system, so you block in the bigger shapes and you keep using smaller brush strokes. And in a painting like this, I'll work in kind of a circular fashion. Like I'll pick a beginning, and then I'll do the rocks, and I'll come down to the reflection, and I'll do the water, and then I'll come along the edges, and then I'll end with the work up here. And the same thing here, where I start with my favorite spot right in the color, the silvery blue, and then I work my way up here, and then I go down to these, and I come back around. So what you're doing is you're compressing the visual experience into 1 second. You're compressing 2 hours into 1 split second. And it takes practice. I mean, it's not all that easy. You just have to get used to it. And what is your system? And everyone doesn't do it the same. That's just how I do it. And that's how I learned it on my own. There's a lot in art, it's weird. We do have colleges to learn art, but most of what you learn is often what you learn by yourself. The coach, the art teacher is directing you, and your fellow artists are also supporting you, but you make the discoveries. And the thing that's also exciting and interesting, I still learn. I'm still learning. I still enjoy this so much, and I paint every day. And I think that's good. I enjoy it. It's like, sometimes I think, you can fall into cliches like, well, as long as I paint, I'm alive. I'm here. I'm alive. If I stop painting, I disappear. And that's weird, but, and you don't have to write that down. But you could write it down. Any other questions? I I have been around quite a while, and I just wanted to say this just because I can get away with it. But I first met Jason Jasperson when he was an 8th grader. And I met Andy Overin when he was 18, coming to Bethany as a headstrong and very talented student. I just said that because I could. I would like to thank everyone for coming. I really appreciate it. If you want to talk to me individually or you have any other questions, I would take them. But hopefully I've answered all your questions. So again, thanks for coming. I think there'll probably be a little reception afterwards. So